In Dubai, where dreams are built on shifting sands, some secrets are buried deeper than others. The marble floors of the Palm Jumeirah villa reflected nothing but emptiness when Detective Sarah Khalil first walked through the door. Everything was too perfect, too clean, too carefully arranged. Her 20 years of experience screamed that someone had been here recently, but there was no trace of struggle, no sign of violence. Just an overwhelming sense that something terrible had happened in this pristine space overlooking the Arabian Gulf. What she couldn't know was that she was looking at the final scene of a perfect crime, one that had taken months to orchestrate and seconds to execute. The truth was buried beneath layers of deception so sophisticated that even seasoned investigators would struggle to find it. This is the story of a flight attendant who thought she'd found her fairy tale, a sheikh who confused possession with love, and a wife who turned patience into the deadliest weapon of all. Subscribe now because what you're about to hear will change how you see the Golden City forever. Sheikh Nasar Al-Malik learned early that money wasn't currency, it was control. Born into third-generation oil wealth, he commanded $2 billion in assets by age 42, his grandfather's empire spanning from Dubai's glittering towers to London's financial district. Oxford-educated and fluent in 5 languages, he was everything the modern Arabian prince should be: charitable foundations, cultural preservation, a face that graced magazine covers from Forbes to Vanity Fair. But perfection was his prison. His arranged marriage to Maham al-Rashid had been a merger, not a romance, uniting 2 powerful families in a ceremony that made international headlines. For 15 years, he played the role of devoted husband while suffocating behind the mask of respectability. 3 children, countless diplomatic receptions, and endless board meetings filled his days, but his nights belonged to darker appetites. The affairs started small. Society women who understood discretion, brief encounters that never threatened his carefully constructed world. But Nassar craved something real, something dangerous. He began seeking relationships outside his circle, women who saw him as salvation rather than obligation. The psychology was simple. He was addicted to being worshipped, to transforming ordinary lives with extraordinary wealth. What these women didn't understand was that they were never lovers. They were possessions, temporary distractions in his gilded cage. And when he tired of them, they disappeared from his world as quickly as they had entered it. Until Yasmin Khoury carried dreams larger than the cramped Sharjah apartment she shared with her parents. Born in war-torn Beirut, she immigrated to Dubai at 12, her father driving taxis 16 hours daily, while her mother took in sewing work. But Yasmin was different. Teachers recognized her brilliance early, her ability to absorb languages like desert sand soaks rain. Emirates recruited her after university, recognizing the rare combination of beauty and intelligence that first-class passengers expected. For 3 years, she served champagne to billionaires and poured Arabic coffee for ministers, every dirham saved for a carefully planned future. Her Instagram account showcased glimpses of glamour, building a modest modeling portfolio while maintaining the exhausting schedule of international flights. The loneliness cut deeper than financial struggle. Work schedules destroyed friendships, rotating shifts made dating impossible. She spent evenings alone, editing photos and dreaming of a life where she wouldn't be invisible to the people she served. Flight EK205 to London changed everything. Seat 1A, Sheikh Nasar Al-Malik. Unlike other passengers who looked through her, Nassar saw her. He asked her name, remembered it, engaged in genuine conversation during the quiet hours over dark oceans. When she mentioned modeling aspirations, his interest seemed authentic rather than predatory. As the plane descended into Heathrow, he handed her his card. "Call me when you're back in Dubai. I know people in fashion, and you have exactly the look they're searching for." Yasmin tucked the card away, heart racing with possibilities she knew she shouldn't entertain. She had no idea she was about to become his second wife in everything but name, or that this encounter would set in motion events that would end in her complete destruction. The call came 3 days after the London flight, just as Yasmin was preparing for another grueling rotation to Singapore. Nassar's voice was warm, almost paternal, when he invited her to meet at the Atlantis Royal Penthouse. "I've spoken to some friends in the fashion industry," he said. "They're very interested in meeting you." The elevator to the penthouse felt like ascending to another world. When the doors opened, Yasmin stepped into luxury that redefined her understanding of wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Palm Jumeirah like a living photograph, while Persian carpets worth more than her annual salary covered marble floors that reflected Arabian Gulf sunlight. Nassar didn't treat her like a conquest. He poured tea with his own hands, asked about her family with genuine interest, listened as she spoke about her dreams with the attention of someone who truly cared. When she mentioned her parents' financial struggles, he didn't offer money. Instead, he offered something more intoxicating: hope. "I want to help you achieve your dreams," he said, placing a small Cartier box on the glass table between them. Inside, a diamond bracelet caught the afternoon light like captured stars. "Not because I expect anything in return, but because I believe in your potential." The rationalization came easily. This wasn't an affair, it was mentorship. This wasn't prostitution, it was investment in her future. The gifts, designer clothing that made her feel transformed, jewelry that photographed beautifully for her portfolio, were simply the tools successful people used to help others succeed. She convinced herself this arrangement was temporary, just until her modeling career launched properly. What she didn't see were the cameras, discreetly positioned to capture their intimate moments. What she didn't know was that every gift came with invisible strings. Each kindness was calculated to create dependency. Nassar documented everything, not for blackmail but for insurance. He had learned from previous relationships that evidence was protection, proof of consent when consent became complicated. The double life began seamlessly. At Emirates, Yasmin maintained her professional facade, her uniform pressed to perfection, her smile never wavering as she served passengers who would never see her as more than sophisticated service. But her colleagues started noticing changes. The Hermes scarf she wore on layovers, the way her phone buzzed constantly with messages that made her smile, the expensive handbag she claimed was a gift from her aunt in Lebanon. Sasha, her closest colleague, cornered her in the crew lounge after a particularly long flight to New York. "Where did you get that bracelet?" she asked, eyeing the Cartier diamonds that Yasmin had forgotten to remove before work. "That's not flight attendant salary jewelry. It was my grandmother's," Yasmin lied smoothly, tucking her wrist behind her back. But Sasha's suspicions had been planted, and in the small world of Emirates' cabin crew, whispers spread faster than gossip in a village marketplace. The pressure from home intensified as her parents began asking pointed questions about her future. Her mother, practical as always, wondered when she would find a suitable husband. Her father, aging rapidly from 16-hour taxi shifts, spoke hopefully about her eventual marriage providing security for the family. Yasmin sent money regularly, but her parents' expectations weighed heavier than their financial needs. Her Instagram account became a careful curation of her new reality. Photos taken in luxury hotel suites during layovers, designer clothing strategically cropped to hide identifying details, glimpses of wealth that suggested success without revealing its source. The comments poured in from modeling scouts and photographers, each message feeding her belief that she was building a legitimate career. Nassar introduced her to his network with the skill of a master manipulator. Fashion photographers who owed him favors, magazine editors whose publications received his family's advertising money, modeling agents who understood the unspoken rules of patronage. Each connection felt genuine, each opportunity seemed earned through talent rather than transaction. But behind every introduction was Nassar's invisible hand. The photographer who called her a natural had been paid to say those words. The magazine feature showcasing Dubai's rising fashion talents existed because the Al-Malik family owned 20% of the publishing company. The modeling agency that offered her representation specialized in women who served wealthy patrons rather than legitimate fashion careers. Yasmin's guilt battled with intoxication daily. She knew the relationship crossed professional boundaries, understood that accepting expensive gifts created moral complications. But the alternative, returning to cramped apartments and financial uncertainty, felt like choosing death over life. She convinced herself she was different from other women who took money from married men, that her situation was unique because Nassar genuinely cared about her success. Meanwhile, Nassar executed a pattern perfected over years of similar relationships. He created dependency through carefully calibrated generosity, making himself indispensable to her dreams while ensuring she remained dispensable to his reality. The surveillance he arranged bodyguards who followed her for protection, phone monitoring that he justified as security measures, tightened around her like silk ropes, beautiful but increasingly restrictive. He made her feel special, chosen, destined for greatness. But to him, She was simply another temporary resident in his collection of beautiful, ambitious women who mistook transaction for transformation. The recordings he made, the financial records he kept, the photographs that documented their relationship, all were preparation for the inevitable ending he had already planned. Maham al-Rashid had been trained from birth to observe, to analyze, to wait. The daughter of career diplomats, she learned early that power lay not in reaction but in patient strategy. For 15 years, she had watched her husband's affairs with the detached interest of an anthropologist studying predictable behavior patterns. But when she saw Yasmin's photograph in Harper's Bazaar Arabia, featured in an article about Dubai's most promising new faces, something shifted in her perfectly controlled world. The photo credit mentioned the Al-Malik Cultural Foundation's support for emerging artists. Her husband wasn't just sleeping with this flight attendant, he was elevating her, investing in her future in ways he had never done for previous affairs. The investigation began quietly. Maham's family connections provided access to information that would have taken professional investigators months to gather. Private detectives submitted reports detailing restaurant visits, hotel receipts, jewelry purchases. Financial records revealed a pattern of support that extended far beyond casual generosity. The breaking point came when Maham realized Nassar intended to make Yasmin his second wife. Not legally, that would require family approval and social complications, but practically, he was preparing to install her in a luxury apartment, provide ongoing financial support, perhaps even father children who would inherit portions of his wealth. This crossed every line Maham had carefully drawn around their marriage. Previous affairs had been temporary distractions, brief departures from routine that ultimately strengthened her position by providing her husband with outlets for his restlessness. But Yasmin represented permanent threat, a woman young enough and ambitious enough to potentially replace rather than simply supplement. For the first time in her marriage, Maham decided that patience was not the appropriate strategy. This situation required elimination, not endurance. The plan that began forming in her methodical mind would be thorough, undetectable, and final. Yasmin Khoury would not become the second wife of Sheikh Nasar Al-Malik. She would simply disappear. Maham al-Rashid studied her enemy the way a chess master studies the board before checkmate. For 6 months, she compiled a dossier that would have impressed military intelligence. Yasmin's schedule, mapped to the minute. Her Instagram posts, analyzed for patterns and psychological tells. Her family's financial situation, documented down to her father's taxi route and her mother's sewing clients. The girl was predictable in her hunger. Every post screamed desperation disguised as confidence. Every carefully cropped luxury photo revealed someone trying too hard to project success. Maham recognized the type: beautiful, ambitious, naive enough to believe fairy tales could override reality. The perfect target for a perfectly planned destruction. The modeling agency took 3 months to construct. Mirage Elite Models emerged with a website featuring stolen portfolios from European agencies, doctored client testimonials, and fabricated success stories. She rented offices in DIFC, furnished them with the kind of minimalist elegance that suggested serious money. The business registration showed a network of shell companies leading back to offshore accounts that would disappear the moment their purpose was served. Recruiting the right accomplices required delicate negotiation. Hassan and Karim had served her family for 15 years, former military men whose loyalty was absolute and whose skills extended far beyond personal protection. They understood the value of silence, the weight of family honor, and the necessity of actions that could never be discussed. When Maham explained what she needed, they asked no questions beyond logistics and timing. But the masterstroke was Layla Ben Ali, a Moroccan woman whose modeling career had peaked 5 years earlier in Paris fashion shows before reality and cocaine destroyed her prospects. Now she worked Dubai's high-end escort circuit, her elegant beauty and designer wardrobe masking the desperation that Maham recognized and exploited. For 50,000 dirhams and a guarantee of protection, Layla agreed to become the face of a modeling agency that existed only to destroy one flight attendant's life. The Palm Jumeirah villa was purchased through a Cayman Islands company that traced to a Swiss bank account that led to a Dubai holding company that ultimately disappeared in a labyrinth of legal paperwork. Location scouting had been methodical, isolated enough for privacy, luxurious enough to convince, equipped with the technology necessary for what Maham planned to document. 6 months of preparation distilled into a single psychological profile. Yasmin Khoury craved validation more than money, recognition more than security. She would walk into any trap disguised as opportunity, sign any contract that promised the career she desperately wanted. Her Instagram revealed a woman performing happiness while drowning in the gap between aspiration and reality. The approach began on a Tuesday morning at Tom and Serg, the kind of Dubai mall cafe where influencers performed their perfectly curated lives. Layla positioned herself at the next table as Yasmin edited photos on her laptop, preparing posts that would suggest success she hadn't achieved. "Excuse me," Layla's French accent carried just the right mix of authority and warmth. "I couldn't help noticing your work. Are you a model?" The conversation flowed like a river finding its path to the sea. Layla praised Yasmin's Instagram presence with specific details that suggested genuine professional interest. She mentioned luxury brands by name, dropping insider references that convinced Yasmin she was speaking to someone with real industry connections. "I represent Mirage Elite Models," Layla said, sliding her business card across the marble table. "We work exclusively with high-end fashion brands, very selective clientele. Your look is exactly what one of our major clients is seeking." The validation Yasmin had craved for years poured over her like warm honey. Someone with professional credentials was finally recognizing what she had always believed about herself. The excitement in her voice drew curious glances from nearby tables as Layla outlined opportunities that sounded too perfect to question. "We need to move quickly," Layla emphasized, creating the urgency that would prevent second thoughts. "The brands are very specific about timing, and this opportunity is only being offered to 3 girls in the region." The exclusivity was crucial. Yasmin wouldn't just be chosen, she would be specially selected from a limited pool of candidates. The psychology was flawless, appealing to her need to feel unique rather than simply available. "The shoot is tomorrow at a private villa," Layla concluded, watching Yasmin's pupils dilate with excitement. "Very exclusive clientele, the kind who value discretion above everything else." That night, Yasmin could barely sleep. She arranged her portfolio with the care of someone preparing for a life-changing audition, selected outfits that balanced professionalism with the kind of edge fashion photographers supposedly loved. Her Instagram story documented the preparation with barely contained excitement. "Big shoot tomorrow. Dreams coming true." The morning routine that would be her last began with Turkish coffee and obsessive Instagram checking. Comments on her story fed her anticipation, friends expressing excitement, colleagues from Emirates asking for details she couldn't share due to the confidentiality agreement Layla had mentioned. Her mother called as she prepared, asking about work, about marriage prospects, about the future that seemed increasingly uncertain despite Yasmin's reassurances. "I have something big happening today, Mama," Yasmin said, examining her reflection in the mirror. "Something that could change everything for our family." The taxi ride to Palm Jumeirah felt like traveling toward destiny. She photographed the address for Instagram, planning posts that would document her arrival at success. The driver, Hassan in civilian clothes, made pleasant conversation about Dubai's fashion scene while studying her reactions through the rearview mirror. The villa exceeded her expectations. Pristine white walls reflected Arabian Gulf sunlight, while floor-to-ceiling windows framed views that belonged in luxury magazines. Professional photography equipment dominated the main room, expensive lighting rigs and cameras that suggested serious investment in the shoot. Layla greeted her with air kisses and compliments, playing the role of successful agent with theatrical precision. "You look absolutely perfect," she said, leading Yasmin through rooms staged to suggest wealth and taste. "The client is going to be thrilled." The contract seemed standard, though Yasmin's excitement prevented careful reading. Terms about exclusivity, confidentiality, and image rights blurred together as she signed documents that would later disappear as completely as she would. "Let's start with some champagne," Layla suggested, producing a bottle of Dom Perignon that sparkled in crystal glasses. "It relaxes the features, gives that natural glow photographers love." Yasmin raised the glass in a toast to her future, unaware that the liquid contained more than alcohol. Behind one-way mirrors, Maham watched with the satisfaction of a hunter who had positioned the perfect trap. Every detail had been calculated, every psychology anticipated. The girl she was about to destroy had no idea that her dreams were about to become the instrument of her own annihilation. The shoot would begin with champagne and compliments, but it would end with questions that would strip away every illusion Yasmin had built about her life. In 30 minutes, the real horror would begin. The photography session began like every aspiring model's dream. Professional lighting bathed Yasmin in golden warmth as Layla directed poses with the authority of someone who had spent years in fashion studios. Designer clothing hung on rolling racks, each piece carefully selected to suggest legitimacy and luxury. The champagne created a pleasant buzz that made Yasmin feel relaxed, confident, ready for her close-up. Behind the master bedroom's one-way mirror, Maham watched every moment through high-definition security feeds. She sat motionless as a predator observing prey, her manicured fingers tracing patterns on the leather armrest of her chair. Hassan and Karim flanked the doorways, invisible but ready. Everything was proceeding exactly as she had planned for 6 months. The sedatives in the Dom Perignon worked slowly, subtly. Yasmin felt more relaxed than usual, her inhibitions softening around the edges. When Layla suggested more revealing poses, she agreed without the professional caution that would normally have guided her decisions. The camera captured everything: her trust, her excitement, her complete vulnerability. "You photograph beautifully," Layla said, adjusting lighting with practiced ease. "Tell me about yourself. Any special relationships? You're so stunning. I bet men fight over you." The questions felt natural, part of the model-agent bonding that Yasmin had read about in fashion magazines. She found herself sharing more than intended, mentioning a special friend who helped with her career, someone important who preferred privacy. The champagne made her chatty, unguarded, honest about things she usually kept compartmentalized. Something shifted in Layla's smile, a coldness that Yasmin couldn't quite identify. The questions became more pointed, more personal. The camera continued clicking, but the poses felt different now, less about fashion and more about documentation. Yasmin sensed wrongness in the air like a change in atmospheric pressure, but the sedatives prevented clear thinking. The master bedroom door opened with theatrical precision. Maham al-Rashid entered carrying an iPad, her presence transforming the staged photo shoot into something darker and more dangerous. She moved with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to command, her designer abaya rustling softly against marble floors. "Do you know who I am?" Maham's voice carried the authority of 15 years as a diplomatic wife, each word carefully measured and precisely delivered. Yasmin's champagne-fogged brain struggled to process the elegant woman now standing before her. Then she saw the wedding photographs covering the villa's walls, family portraits she had been too excited to notice during her arrival. Nassar's face smiled from every frame, his arms around the same woman, their 3 children gathered in formal family poses. "You've been sleeping with my husband for 8 months, Maham continued, her tone conversational, as if discussing weather or weekend plans. "Nasar Al-Malik, my husband, the father of my children." The iPad in her hands displayed surveillance photos that made Yasmin's blood freeze. Hotel entrances, restaurant tables, intimate moments she thought had been private. Every gift, every meeting, every lie had been documented with the thoroughness of a criminal investigation. "I didn't know," Yasmin whispered, the words sounding pathetic even to herself. "He never told me he was married." Maham's laugh was sharp as breaking crystal. "You didn't know? You thought a billionaire sheikh was single? You thought his generosity came without cost?" The evidence presentation was methodical, devastating. Hotel receipts showing patterns of meetings. Recorded phone calls where Yasmin's voice spoke words of love to a married man. Bank transfers documenting every expensive gift, every paid modeling opportunity, every transaction that proved she was nothing more than a high-end prostitute. The villa's security system activated with electronic precision. Doors locked automatically, windows sealed shut. The professional photography equipment remained, but its purpose had changed completely. This wasn't about creating fashion portfolios anymore. "This was never about modeling," Maham said, settling into a chair positioned to capture every moment of what would follow. "This is about consequences." The ritual began with forced confession. Cameras recorded as Yasmin admitted to the affair, her tears mixing with makeup that ran in dark streams down her cheeks. Each question was designed to humiliate, to strip away the dignity she had built around her choices. "Say it clearly," Maham commanded. "Tell the camera you knowingly slept with a married man. Tell them you took money for sex." The photography that followed was designed to destroy rather than elevate, compromising positions that would make her unemployable, images that would end any legitimate modeling career before it started. Hassan and Karim remained masked, their military training evident in how they handled the equipment and controlled the situation. The document Yasmin was forced to sign claimed involvement with drug traffickers, admissions to crimes she had never committed. Her fingerprints were transferred to weapons she had never touched. Bank transfers appeared in her name, connecting her to criminal networks that existed only in Maham's fabricated evidence. Hours passed in systematic psychological torture. Verbal abuse about destroying families, about being worthless, about deserving everything that was happening. Yasmin's complete psychological collapse was documented from every angle, her breakdown becoming the final piece of evidence in Maham's perfect frame-up. The staged scenarios created connections to multiple suspects. Fake surveillance footage showed Yasmin meeting with a jealous Emirates colleague who had supposedly discovered her affairs. Digital manipulation placed her in nightclubs with promoters known to police. Hotel security cameras were doctored to suggest meetings with criminals who would become suspects in her disappearance. Financial trails were created to support every false narrative. Money transfers that looked like blackmail payments. Bank records suggesting drug involvement. Digital footprints connecting her to people she had never met but who would provide perfect alibis for Maham while implicating themselves. By evening, the villa contained enough fabricated evidence to support a dozen different theories about Yasmin's disappearance. Jealous co-workers, criminal associates, dangerous lovers, every possible suspect except the woman who had orchestrated everything from behind one-way mirrors. The perfect crime was complete. No direct connection existed between Maham al-Rashid and whatever would happen to Yasmin Khoury. The modeling agency would disappear, the villa's ownership would dissolve into legal maze, and everyone involved would vanish as completely as their victim. As the sun set over Palm Jumeirah, casting long shadows through floor-to-ceiling windows, Maham looked at the broken woman who had threatened her marriage and felt only the satisfaction of justice served. Tomorrow, Yasmin would simply cease to exist, her disappearance explained by evidence pointing everywhere except toward the truth. The perfect disappearance began with a perfectly crafted email. Yasmin's Emirates account sent an automated message to human resources, citing a family emergency in Lebanon that required immediate departure. The tone matched her writing style, the timing aligned with her off-duty schedule, and the explanation seemed plausible enough to avoid immediate suspicion. At Dubai International Airport, security cameras captured what appeared to be Yasmin boarding a flight to Beirut. The woman in the footage wore identical clothing, carried matching luggage, and moved with similar confidence. But Hassan's military training had taught him that the devil lived in details, and he had rehearsed every gesture with the body double until her performance was flawless. Her Instagram account continued posting on schedule, automated uploads showing travel photos from Lebanon, Turkey, and eventually Paris. Each image was geotagged precisely, time-stamped accurately, and captioned in her distinctive voice. To anyone following her journey, Yasmin appeared to be living her dream, traveling Europe while pursuing modeling opportunities that required absolute discretion. The family deception was perhaps the cruelest element. Yasmin's mother received messages explaining that her daughter had signed an exclusive modeling contract with a European agency, one that demanded complete privacy during the initial campaign launch. The explanation fed their hopes while preventing investigation, turning their pride into unwitting accomplices in covering up her disappearance. Detective Sarah Khalil approached the case with the skepticism earned through 15 years in law enforcement. Former military intelligence officers weren't easily impressed by apparent coincidences or perfect explanations. When Yasmin's family finally contacted Dubai police after 2 months of sparse communication, Sarah's instincts whispered that something fundamental was wrong. The digital evidence told a different story than the official narrative. Reverse image searches revealed that several of Yasmin's recent posts used stock photography, professional travel shots purchased from online databases and passed off as personal experiences. The metadata was too clean, the posting schedule too regular, the entire social media presence too perfect for someone supposedly living spontaneous adventures across Europe. Airport footage analysis revealed the first major crack in the carefully constructed narrative. The woman who boarded the Beirut flight matched Yasmin's height and build but moved with different body language, carried herself with training that suggested military or security background rather than civilian modeling aspirations. Frame-by-frame analysis revealed subtle differences that pointed toward deception rather than departure. Financial forensics exposed the modeling agency's shell company structure, a labyrinth of offshore accounts and Dubai business registrations that led nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. The sophistication suggested resources and planning far beyond what any individual could accomplish alone, pointing toward organized conspiracy rather than spontaneous disappearance. The breakthrough came from traffic cameras surrounding Palm Jumeirah, digital breadcrumbs that Maham's meticulous planning had failed to completely erase. Yasmin's taxi arrival was captured from multiple angles, but her departure was nowhere to be found. She had entered the villa and simply vanished, as if the marble floors had opened and swallowed her whole. The villa's internal security system had been sophisticated but not perfect. Deleted files on the main server contained fragments of footage that digital forensic specialists reconstructed like archaeologists reassembling ancient pottery. Glimpses of the confrontation, moments of violence, frames that showed faces behind what was supposed to be perfect crime. Breaking Hassan required patience and psychological pressure that Sarah had learned during military interrogations. The guard's loyalty to the Al-Rashid family ran deep, but his conscience struggled with memories of what he had witnessed in that pristine villa. 3 days of questioning revealed cracks that widened into partial confession, fragments of truth that pointed toward Maham's location and involvement. The raid on the Al-Rashid compound required diplomatic coordination that delayed justice for weeks. International implications, family connections, questions about immunity and jurisdiction all slowed the investigation while evidence was potentially being destroyed. But when Dubai police finally moved, they moved decisively. Maham maintained her composure even while being handcuffed in front of international media cameras. 15 years as a diplomat's daughter had trained her for moments of public scrutiny, and she carried herself with dignity that suggested innocence even as overwhelming evidence proved her guilt. Her first words to reporters were about the tragedy of false accusations against grieving families. Layla's cooperation came in exchange for reduced sentences, her full confession revealing the careful planning and execution that had seemed impossible until every step was documented with criminal precision. Her testimony provided the human element that transformed digital evidence into a story that judges and juries could understand. The trial became Dubai's most watched legal proceeding in decades. International media covered every session, broadcasting the fall of a family whose name had represented power and respectability across the Arabian Peninsula. The verdict was inevitable. Life imprisonment for Maham, 25 years for her accomplices, and the complete destruction of a criminal conspiracy that had seemed perfect until it wasn't. Sheikh Nassar's downfall came swiftly after Maham's conviction. Divorce proceedings revealed financial irregularities that led to asset seizure, business partnerships dissolved under scandal, and diplomatic immunity couldn't protect him from the social exile that followed his wife's conviction for murdering his mistress. Yasmin's family found closure without ever finding her body, buried somewhere in the desert that surrounded Dubai's impossible dreams. The villa was demolished within months, its location transformed into a memorial garden where other families could remember loved ones who had vanished into the city's dark shadows. Detective Sarah Khalil's promotion came with a new mandate, reforming how Dubai police investigated missing persons cases, ensuring that wealth and power could never again hide truth beneath layers of perfectly constructed lies. The final truth was simple. Yasmin Khoury was dead, murdered by jealousy disguised as justice, killed by a woman who believed honor justified any action. Her story became a warning about the dangers of trusting fairy tales in a city built on foundations that shifted like desert sand. The lesson echoed across Dubai's glittering skyline. No amount of money or influence could ultimately hide the truth, and every perfect crime contained the seeds of its own destruction. Technology had made the impossible possible, both for those who committed crimes and for those who solved them. Justice had been served, but the cost was measured in a young woman's dreams, destroyed by people who mistook power for permission to play God with other people's lives. In a city of gold and glass, some shadows run deeper than the morning light can reach.